We've all heard the story about the guy who finally finds a use for a piece of scrap wood he's had laying around for 20 years. It almost becomes an I told you so moment, like he's vindicated that he finally used it, while he totally disregards the other 25 pieces of scrap wood that he'll probably never use. Well, that's actually where this story starts. I built a table 9 years ago, and this is what's left over. Now, it's not tiny scraps or little cutoffs, but I've been staring at it for years. Heck, it's moved with me 4 times. Let's see what we can make out of it.
Oh yeah! 1, 2, 3, 4!
I've got my design laid out here. The grain patterns match up really nicely. Coloring is going to be perfect. What I have to do now is clean this edge up so that I can get nice tight joints. I've flipped the orientation of these boards around so many times. I'm in my own head at this point, but I finally landed on what I think looks really good, and it is time to get ready for the glue up with the domino.
This is my first YouTube video. Well, it's the first one I've uploaded. I guess technically I have been in a YouTube video. In fact, if you know what video I'm talking about, paste the link in the comments. I think people will get a kick out of that. I think some people get a little bit nervous or weirded out by seeing themselves on camera and definitely hearing their voice recorded. And as you and I have both noticed, when I get indecision, I like to tap my fingers, which I didn't know until now. I guess we all have those things about ourselves that maybe we don't notice. Anyway, with this being my first video, I just wanted to say thank you. Sincerely, thank you for taking the time to watch my video. And now I'm gonna ask for a little bit of help. I know it's a little bit early in the video. I mean, technically you don't even know if I finished this project or not, but I'm going to ask for 2 things. First is, well, kind of the obvious. Can you like this video, maybe subscribe to my channel? And if you really like it, maybe even post it to your Facebook. You know, so George from your 8th grade PE class can make some offhand political comment about inflating lumber prices. That'd be super helpful. And the second thing is this. I just want feedback. Can you tell me what you liked about this video? Or even what you don't like? Am I going too fast or too slow? I'm sure you're tired of hearing my voice, so I guess you can tell me that if you want. Honestly, I just need your input to help this thing grow. So, thank you. Okay, back to the project. So, if you can't tell, or you didn't read the title of this video, I'm building a desk. And we're starting here with the desktop. So, I'm not kidding. I really have had this wood for like 9 years just sitting around, and I've been trying to find a use for it. Hasn't quite worked out, and this was the perfect project. So this is ash, and it is super beefy. I mean, it is a full 2 inches thick, and while it's really dry, it's still a little bit difficult to work with because there's a few bows in the wood. So I'm using these cauls to make sure that everything's aligning during my glue up process, and the way that I designed the top the bows are going in opposite directions, so they'll level each other out. And I was thoughtful about the end grain, so this thing will be perfectly flat. And to further make sure of that, I'm working in sub-assemblies, which basically just means that instead of gluing up all 4 pieces at once, I'm doing the 2 outside pieces separately, letting those dry, and then just doing 1 center line glue up.
So I'm really glad that I went with the sub-assemblies. The boards were just a little bit warped. I was able to flatten them out using that caul. Now that I've got both sides done, I've got to do 1 more center line glue up.
3, 2, 1, yeah!
I had a design in my head for this desk, or at least a general idea of what I wanted to accomplish. And instead of making 4 legs, I wanted to do something a little different, something more like a square base, except definitely not square. I wanted to use angles, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to use a 5-degree angle or a 10-degree angle. I know it doesn't sound like much of a difference, but it is when it's traveling close to 30 inches. So I decided to draw out a full-size version of what I was looking for. And if done correctly, I could actually use it as a template. Well, here's where we landed. Here's a simple profile of the desk. Now, I know I talked about 5-degree angles and 10-degree angles, and ultimately, I chose both. So the horizontal pieces were cut at 5 degrees on the inside, and the vertical pieces are at 10 degrees on the outside, which means that they're going to be wider at the top. Here's another angle where you can see that we're going to do a front and a back apron. Something a little more challenging about this design is that those aprons are going to follow the same 10-degree angle as the outside of those legs, and every good desk needs at least 1 drawer. Now, to round out the design, one final view, you'll see these 2 lines on the top of the desk, and yes, I am going to inlay some epoxy. Now, before you freak out and turn off this video, I will tell you why I'm doing this later.
So what you see here is 4 different pieces of wood, and ultimately the most important thing are these 5-degree cuts that connect to the legs. Beyond that, it's going to be about creating the perfect template so that every single one of these radiuses in the corners can be routed out perfectly.
Spoiler alert, I didn't use it as a template, but I did use it to cut the pieces out. I'm sure most of you have noticed that there's quite a few cracks and checks in this wood, and beyond obviously designing around them and not using the big cracks, I am going to fill all the rest of them with epoxy. And as you've seen, anytime I use epoxy, I also use tape. But what you may not know is that I sort of have a standing rule in my shop. Okay, my garage, whatever. Basically, anytime you have paper or tape, you have to ball it up and make a quick shot into the trash can. Now, I played a lot of basketball growing up, so I'm pretty consistent making it on my first shot. First try, baby.
Here's where I'm at. I've made 2 templates. The first one was just off because my angles weren't right. I made the second one. Radius corners aren't quite big enough. They're not what I was imagining. It's not the original design. What I realized though, if I'm going to grout the inside edges and I was going to use a template, I can just use a rabbet bit. So basically, instead of using a template that sits on top of the leg, I'm gonna use this that sits under the leg.
This process is definitely time consuming, but the name of the game is consistency, and this gave me the consistency that I needed. I'm taking about 1/4 of an inch off of each pass, so you can see I go around once, lower the bit a little bit further, go down, take a little bit more material off, until eventually I get as far as I can. Then I gotta flip the leg, do the other side, so you'll see me do 2 or 3 passes here. And I'm left with just a little bit there in the center, which I can just take a pattern bit with my palm router and break that down until it is even with the rest of the inside of the leg. And it gave me exactly what I wanted. So I wish I would have thought of this before going through the process of making all those templates. But hey, woodworking is about finding solutions, and I feel like I found a good one here. So here's the whole process. Couple of passes, flip the piece, couple of passes, clean it up with the palm router, and this was a really repeatable process. That's something I'm still learning. It's kind of like the 5-degree cuts at the beginning of the video. Doesn't matter if they're 5.2 degrees, as long as they're all the exact same. So sometimes it's more important to find a repeatable process than to try to make perfect cuts every single time. Anyway, this table base is almost done. I'm using dominoes to attach the apron to the base, so just showing my reference lines there, and again, a very repeatable process. As long as I use my reference lines accordingly, everything's going to line up perfectly and hopefully be square.
All right, let's get this table down to final dimensions. So we're gonna take a tiny bit off of each end to square it up.
starting this process to inlay the epoxy, first I'm just marking off the areas that I need to remove so that I can pour the epoxy, and then I use my track saw tracks as a guide to remove the material where I'm going to do the inlay. And I told you I would tell you why I'm inlaying these 2 lines of epoxy, and I don't really know why I feel the need to justify it. I mean, there's a seemingly growing crowd, or maybe it's just a small but loud group of woodworkers who are quote-unquote tired of epoxy projects, or they claim that it's not wood, so this is not woodworking. And I get it, it's a new medium, but I like it, so whatever. Anyway, the reason why I'm doing this is because my dad told me to. That's right, my dad told me I had to specifically lay 2 lines of epoxy in this desktop. And let me take it a step further, because not only did he say that it would help set my desk apart from others, but he also said that this would make it sexy. That's right, not 1 line, but 2 lines of epoxy would make my desk look sexy. Thanks, Dad. So the backstory there is that I'm always looking for new things to try, or something that will, set my work apart from others. And I had toyed with 1 line of epoxy, maybe 2, and when I mentioned that, it was like a light bulb went off and he said, "You don't have an option, you absolutely have to do this." And yeah, I guess I still listen to my parents. Anyway, Glamour shots. Usually I wouldn't give a drawer its own section in a video, but I'm using some new techniques and there's some interesting angles. Also, I'm not using hardware, so the entire drawer is made out of wood, including the slides. And that's where I'm starting here. I need a piece of wood to stretch from the front apron to the back apron, cut at the 10-degree angle so that it will sit in there perfectly. These also need to be square, so I use my machine square just to check. And then I can start marking for, you guessed it, more dominoes. Now, the interesting thing is that these have to be cut at 10 degrees as well, so that they're coming out level and those stretchers can sit straight. And then it's on to cutting the front apron drawer. After that, the runners and stretchers, and it got a little confusing, so let me explain.
I'm going to cut 1/4 inch dado that the runner will slide into these stretchers. The runner will then stick out 1/2 inch that the drawer can run along. I've got the stretcher and I've got the runner. This will sit in here like this, and the drawer will run along this runner. I need to cut this in half and get it glued into the 2 sides. I'm gonna make the drawer out of ash so it matches the desktop. So I've got to get this thing milled down to be able to make the drawer box.
Okay, lots going on here. Don't worry, it'll make sense when it all comes together. This is the back of the drawer, and now I'm cutting slots for the runners. This is how the drawer will move in and out. I'm also using dowels and screws, so I'm just recessing some holes here on the drill press. Okay, and because I'm sort of going for a minimalist design and not using any hardware, I decided that the coolest way to at least include a handle was to recess this area in the bottom of the drawer where you can put your hand to pull it out. I know we're bouncing around a lot here, but there are just so many parts and pieces for a drawer. The last part that I have to build is, well, maybe the most important. It's the bottom of the drawer. I decided to stick with ash to match the sides. They were about 1/4 of an inch, so glue them up, clamp them down, sand them down, one last dado slot, and boom, we got a drawer. This has been quite a process, so thanks for sticking around. We've got a few more things left to do here. If you're wondering how I'm going to mount the base to the tabletop, I'm using these heavy-duty mounting plates, and they'll be connected with furniture bolts. So I'm drilling the holes now for the inserts that go on the bottom of the table, and then the metal bracket will attach to the legs and screw up into these inserts. It holds everything really tight and keeps the legs really rigid. I'm really happy with these. And on to the finishing process, where I promise I won't show you nearly all of the sanding that I did, but there was a lot. My finishing process looks like this. I start at 80 grit, then do 120 with a water pop in between, then 150, 180, and before moving to 220, I put the edge profile on. This is a 1/8 inch round over bit. I've been using 3/16 of an inch forever, but I figured I would give the more subtle round over a try. And this is my soft pad. This allows me to sand those edges and make sure that they're perfectly smooth without altering the profile. And whatever you do to the top of the table, you do to the bottom as well. And now it is hard wax oil time. I'm using Rubio Monocoat, 5% white here. I did mix in a little bit of walnut because I wanted there to be a little bit of dark in that grain while still maintaining the contrast between the light colored ash and that dark epoxy, and of course the heavy contrast when it comes to the walnut base. So I'm just working this in with the Scotch-Brite pad, then I come back with the blue shop towels to wipe off any excess. Guys, blue shop towels are awesome. I mean, they're just so good. I mean, they are expensive, and of course, obviously, this is not sponsored, but you should get some blue shop towels. They're great. All right, moving along. One thing that people seem to be interested in, or at least ask me about a lot, is how long it takes me to build one of these projects, or how many hours I put into each build. And for the hours part, I have absolutely no idea. I mean, filming takes time, and obviously this is not my full-time job, so I don't know how many hours these projects take. But I would say on average, a project of this size takes about 4 weeks. And obviously the next question that is asked is, wow, a month, was it worth it? I don't know. You tell me.